It's time for Security Now. Steve Gibson is here. Lots to talk about. Of course, we'll get through all the security news and then answer some questions. How secure is the new Type-C connector? Is it susceptible to bad USB? Steve has a good idea. Something that could make him $1 million, but he's going to give it to you for free next on Security Now.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Security Now is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com. It's time for Twit's annual audience survey, and we want to hear from you. Please visit twit.tv/survey and let us know what you think. It only takes a few minutes, and your anonymous feedback will help us make Twit even better. We thank you so much for your continued support. twit.tv/survey. This is Security Now with Steve Gibson, episode 499, recorded Tuesday, March 17th, 2015. Your questions, Steve's answers, number 208. Security Now is brought to you by PagerDuty. PagerDuty decreases alerting noise for IT operations and developers to ensure that the right engineers are notified at the right time. Increase your uptime and sign up for a 14-day free trial at pagerduty.com/twit. And by ITProTV. A good IT pro is always learning, and ITProTV is the resource to keep your IT skills and knowledge up to date. ITProTV offers engaging courses streamed to your Roku, Chromecast, computer, or mobile device. For a free 7-day trial and 30% off the lifetime of your account, go to itpro.tv/securitynow and use the code SN30. And by Citrix GoToAssist, the #1 global market leader in remote support. Sign up today for a 30-day free trial. And if you purchase an annual plan in the U.S. or Canada before March 31st, 2015, you'll get a free Samsung Galaxy Tab 4. Visit GoToAssist.com to get started. It's time for Security Now, the show that protects you and your privacy and all that stuff online. And there's never been a better time for Security Now. Steve Gibson is here. He is our Protector-in-Chief. Hello, Steve.
Hey, Leo. Great to be back with you on our regularly scheduled Tuesday.
You sound better. Are you all better? You feeling good?
We're just sort of in the mopping up phases of that last week's disaster. Yeah, as I mentioned then, I hadn't been sick I have never been sick on a podcast, and I don't think I've been sick in 10 years. So wow. It was I guess was something you have to go through every so often as these viruses. It's funny, too, because I had various friends wanting to, just get together and hang out. And I said, no, not until I am absolutely sure that this thing is dead and gone. It exists to try to reproduce and live. That's what a virus is it's a life form trying to perpetuate itself. And this one stops here.
Yeah, there was a science fiction novel I read. I wish I could remember who it was. That's exactly what he's talking about. His parents who got replicated out of existence by another life form, a virus. I wish I could remember. Anyway, yeah, that's kind of what it is. If you think of it that way, it is. It's another life form.
You might be thinking of what was his name? Pachat. I think it was a Larry Niven novel. Might
have been a Larry Niven. I wouldn't be surprised. Yep.
Yeah, and we don't understand the life cycle of this species until the very end. It's one of the things I loved about Niven's books, and it's that they really surprise you. You feel like you're engaged and you're watching the plot and you know what's happening, but there's a whole big meteor about to drop on you.
I love that I love that.
Where you just don't, you're completely blindsided. Yeah. You do not see it coming. Now, that kind of book doesn't read a second time as well because, you know, it really does depend upon you being fully informed yet completely unaware of something crucial. But anyway, yeah. And I don't think that I don't think that Jerry does that. He has that when he co-authors with Niven.
Oh, maybe it's a Niven thing, huh?
But I think it's a Niven thing because in some of Larry Niven's own books, He does that, and I see it when they do it together, but not in Jerry's soul works.
Love plot twists. I just love them.
Yeah. So we have sort of an interesting week of stuff. Not huge, catastrophic, skies falling news, but good stuff to talk about. There's a new nasty crypto thing now making itself known called TeslaCrypt. I want to talk about the Yahoo announcement at South by Southwest on Sunday of their move to eliminate passwords. Then there was big scurry because if you didn't really understand the problem, you could easily say Komodo does it again. And that's why I said kinda. And then the InstantCryptor guys, who I introduced a couple of weeks ago as sort of a teachable moment where they were doing a web-based encryption but had really missed something important. They found out, tried again, but still haven't got it right yet. We have more teachability. And then we have a Q&A this week, so 10 questions, comments, and answers from our listeners.
Good show ahead. And as often is the case, our show today is brought to you by our friends at PagerDuty.com. Don't hate the pager, hate the game, they say. I love that. PagerDuty is actually all about, for those of you who are on PagerDuty, making it work better, decreasing the noise, but increasing your actionability, your operations, your performance. There's a good word for it. It's an operations performance platform that delivers visibility and actionable intelligence to help increase the uptime of your apps, your servers, your websites, your databases. What does that mean? Well, if you're in a business where the software has to run, the services have to be going, the web server has to be up, PagerDuty is an essential tool. You probably already know about being on PagerDuty, having that beeper or that smartphone at all times so that you can respond quickly. PagerDuty becomes the hub of your operations and makes it so much better. It connects all your systems into a single view. You can see critical events across all your monitoring tools. So you add Nagios or Zendesk or HipChat, New Relic. We use New Relic, Amazon Web Services, Datadog as an example. Or roll your own. PagerDuty's got, of course, a full API, App Dynamics. Decrease your resolution time. When an incident occurs, PagerDuty notifies the right team, the right member based upon on-call schedules, personalized alerting preferences. And it's smart, too, because if an alert isn't responded to, PagerDuty automatically escalates issues to another team member until it's fixed. Dispatch alerts by automated phone calls. Doesn't have to be a pager these days. SMS, email, push notifications. Resolve incidents on the go so you can live your life even if you are on call. And by the way, decrease the noise. Incidents are automatically filtered and deduped, so only actionable alerts are delivered, and they're only delivered once or as many times as necessary, but they're not over-delivered. And their analytics tools will help you identify common problems, allowing you to proactively make system improvements and prevent future outages. A lot of companies use PagerDuty. Instagram, Netflix, companies that can't be down. Airbnb, Harvard, Microsoft, Evernote. I want you to try it, and we've got a good deal for you. Get the right engineer on the right problem at the right time. Visit PagerDuty.com/twit to sign up for a free 14-day trial. And for as little as $19 a month, you can increase your uptime with PagerDuty. That's what Boeing does. That's what GitHub does, and Nike, and Pinterest, and Box. And when you sign up for a new account, you'll also get that great free T-shirt, the Don't Hate the Pager, Hate the Game. I'd love to have that. PagerDuty.com/twit. We thank them so much for their support and I know a lot of our listeners are on PagerDuty or on call, and I'm sure they're going to love PagerDuty. The news, that'll kick things off.
So can you bring up the our picture of the week?
Yes, I can.
This is this is a capture of the screen which someone is presented when they've been unlucky enough to get TeslaCrypt installed.
This is like a crypto locker kind of, but for a specific.
Well, so it is. It's very much like CryptoLocker. In fact, it even borrows a little bit on the CryptoLocker brand by using a CryptoLocker.lnk link, which it leaves on your desktop, even though
that's
the guys, yeah, it's weird. Sort of like they want to trade on the brand. The guys at Sophos have noted that the code is completely different. So in no way is this CryptoLocker. But what strikes me when I'm looking at this is how professional looking this has become. The first CryptoLocker was that annoying neon red, amateurish sort of, it looked like it was just sort of thrown together at the last minute. This thing's got TeslaCrypt in barcode across the top, and that's actually a legitimate barcode.
Wow.
So they took the time to actually if you notice, the barcode above the T at the front and the back are the same. No other letters in there repeat, so you can't verify that further. But and I mean, look at it. And what I love is just how cheeky this thing is. It says by the way, all your important files are encrypted. It's like, what? And then very clean looking text. Your Bitcoin address for payment is like this. And at the moment, the cost for private key for decrypting your files will be 1.5 BTC, and they handily convert it into US dollars. It's about 415 US dollars at this point in March. And so they can accept payment to give you the benefit of their decryption of the files that they just stole from you, essentially, either by Bitcoin or by something called PaySafeCard or Ucash, although the cost for using either of those two, the non-Bitcoin choice, is higher. It's £400, which is around $600 US at this point. And as a final teaser, sort of as a proof that they really can do this, they will decrypt one file for you to prove they can. So you could like, oh my God. And then when you sort of settle down and you think, okay, well, what one file must I really have? And they don't decrypt it on your system because that would subject their private key to capture. Instead, you upload the file to them. They use your private key, which only they have, to decrypt the file and then allow you to download it again in order to verify that they're able to do that. So this is what we predicted on this podcast the first instant that CryptoLocker came out, the first one, because it was making too much money. Oh, and I should also say that it says here, payment verification may take up to 12 hours, and similarly, there is a time limit on your ability to do this. So basically, they're moving forward with this model of encrypt your files because it makes money. They've taken something away from you in a way that you can pay to get it back, and unfortunately, many people do. What's different about this latest version, this TeslaCrypt, although brand new code, so not apparently related to the others, is that as like the others, it will seek out photos, financial spreadsheets, office documents, and so forth. But in addition, it seeks out files related to dozens of games, including saved games, configurations, maps, and replays.
It knows how valuable those are to some people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have a major first-person investment in that stuff.
Yep.
So it targets Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, Days, Minecraft, Fallout, and Diablo, as well as configuration files for Steam, which is, of course, the online gaming platform. And also, maybe because of the time of year, looks for files related to tax returns and personal finance, such as Intuit's Quicken software and iTunes stuff. And it can now extend its reach into devices and drives connected by any means. And it will encrypt the files out on those too. USB drives, network file shares, cloud storage folders, and other connected storage devices. So, this is, this was foreseeable when we first saw the first one. And what was so troubling was that these guys had done the crypto right, so that it was pay them or hopefully fall back on a backup and recover from the point of backup, essentially. But so this is, the predictable evolution of of this concept of encrypting your files. I think, unfortunately,
not surprising.
It isn't exactly. It's the way of the future.
Did you see Triangulation yesterday? Because we had a guy named Mark Goodman on. It was great.
I missed it.
Yeah, it's about the book is called Future Crimes, but he's a former LAPD street cop who it's a great story. In a 95, his sergeant said, "Hey Goodman, do you know how to start spell check on WordPerfect?" He said, "Yeah, it's Control F2." He said, "Good. You're hired. You're on our forensics team." It was like, well, you know something about computers anyway. But he became a forensics guy, worked for the Secret Service, the FBI, Interpol. And it's a really compelling book because he's talking about how these guys, this isn't some teenage hacker in Bulgaria anymore.
Right.
He says they're like startups. They have health plans. They have HR. They have, they recruit. You get a job, and that's why it's starting to look like this. They probably have actually designers working there because there's so much money in it. So these things are run like startups.
You can imagine them on some foreign soil saying, "Oh, let's get the money of those rich Americans."
Yeah.
I mean, for them, it's just sport. It's like, why not?
Well, it does raise this issue, and he says this too. He says, I feel like if you're young and you're smart and you're a math major or a computer science guy or gal, and you're thinking about what to do, I would hope you would have, some altruism, maybe want to do public service, maybe want to help law enforcement fight these guys. But unfortunately, there's so much money in being a bad guy. Yeah. And I worry that maybe we've raised a generation that's not immoral, but just kind of amoral. And that they're going, well, it's a good job. It's a good gig. I'll do it.
Yeah. Hey, I had my resume. I floated it around there. Nobody would hire me. But except these guys would.
Yeah.
So I'm doing it.
Well, and he says we need about, 1 million new cyber experts in law enforcement next year. I mean, then there's just nobody, they can't hire enough people anymore.
No.
Yeah. You would like it because he recommended, he's a listener, and he recommended all the things we talk about. He has a protocol. In fact, you can go to truecrimes.com and read it. You'll completely recognize it's called Update, which is what everybody should do. He says the best model for this is not to fight fire with fire, but in fact, kind of treat it like a public health issue with kind of an epidemiological foundation. Have people protect themselves, do the right thing, update their software, don't run as administrator. All the stuff we've been talking about for years. The only thing I disagree with, he has one thing. He says, turn off your router when you're not using it, or unplug the Ethernet cable, because that reduces your attack surface by that many hours. I don't think that's
technically, but yeah, it's not. No,
but everything else
I
thought
mine
was
on right now. If that was true. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like when you go to bed, unplug. But you would never do that because you've got services running all the time. I don't know. I don't know if that's going to help you much anyway. But
yeah, I sort of agree. It's funny too because immediately I jumped to in this idea of the epidemiological model that people. Yeah, really, they don't get involved because they feel like they don't really understand their computer.
And they feel like, hey, it's just me. And we have to emphasize that if you don't get vaccines, it's everybody who suffers from it. It's a societal problem. If you don't protect yourself, your computer becomes part of the problem.
Right. And what I was going to say was that from a health standpoint, I'm increasingly in touch with how actually the model is the same on health.
Yeah.
People don't understand their own body, don't really know what they should do. They get conflicting advice and suggestions from everyone, so they just sort of tune out. It's like, well, I'll just have some,
exactly.
chips and that doesn't seem to hurt me immediately.
We should get you on the radio show more maybe and do kind of this for real people stuff. For non-geek.
I mean, as you noted, it's becoming increasingly important.
Yeah, well, let's talk, because I would love to get you on maybe the radio show every few weeks and talk about it. Yep.
So Yahoo announced at South by Southwest on Sunday that they have decided to make the option of no passwords.
This cracked me up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm really curious what you think of this.
Well,
they are one-time only passwords, right?
What I like about this is that listeners to the podcast already have all of the information that we need in order to parse this, to understand it. It's funny because I'm seeing people in the press talk about something you know and something you have, and I'm thinking, did they get that from us? Because, I mean, we've been talking about this stuff for years, not quite a decade, I think, but, those were the terms, that we introduced for this notion of multi-factor authentication. And what Yahoo has done is, I mean, they do have multi-factor authentication, and they have traditional single-factor username and password where it's something you know. What they've now done is created a different single-factor authentication, which is not something you know, but something you have. In other words, what they're promoting is that if you elect to flip your Yahoo account in this direction, then when you want to log in, you do not give it a username and password. I guess you have to give it a username. It has to know where to send the one-time password. So you just must give it a username. And to a device which you have pre-registered with your account, it then sends and they call it an on-demand password is like their new term for that. It's like, okay, so they own a little chunk of rather useless intellectual property. But the idea is that it then sends your phone via SMS, exactly the kind of thing we've always been talking about, some sort of never to be repeated string. You enter that into this login screen, and it says, oh, okay, fine, you're authenticated. And so Yahoo is, of course, billing this as that wasn't a password that you had to remember. You now no longer have to remember anything. Isn't that wonderful? And the reaction has been, largely from the security community, everybody's in favor of innovating on authentication. Of course, I've been spending the last 18 months innovating on authentication, and it's funny because I got so many people tweeting. I was CC'd, with mentions in people tweeting to Yahoo or anybody else in the press who dared mention this about Squirrel. It's like, yeah. Well, no, it'll happen if it's going to happen. It's not yet ready to be shown, but so in general, people are happy with the notion of innovation. But a great chunk of the security community is made uncomfortable by the fact that now you don't need something you know. It's only something you have. Or rather, it's only something you are sent. And that's a crucial difference. It's not actually something you have. They're billing it not as something you know, but something you have. It's not. It's something you are sent. So that distinction is the Achilles heel of this, as many people have noted, because it's an SMS message. And one of the number one things that malware does when it can in a mobile platform is capture SMS messages that are received by the phone and send them back out. So it makes people uncomfortable that Yahoo has, like almost out of frustration with the problems they're having, done something different, but with a different set of problems. And mark my words, we will see this thing defeated. I mean, it's not like they've come up with something super secure.
No, it's less secure, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The reason Squirrel is special is that it is an online transaction. The server challenges your device to prove prove a secret that only it has, and it responds to the challenge. This has nothing like that. So that if somebody intercepted this token going to your phone and entered it themselves, they're logged in as you.
And that's easy to do, I think. I mean, SMS is not very secure.
Exactly. It's a very weak, low security messaging system, really never designed for authentication. It was designed for, hey, I'll be 5 minutes late.
Well, it's fine for second factor, but this is this isn't second factor. And I think that's kind of, to me, it feels like Yahoo's trying to trick people into thinking, oh, this is like second factor, it's more safe, when in fact it's much less safe.
Right, because you are not needing to provide anything you know. And in fact, this would be something which in a situation where you might be coerced to log in, you can't say, I'm not going to give you my password to the authorities. They put you in front of a screen, type your name in to Yahoo, and your phone sends them the key they need to log in as you.
They don't need you at all.
As just one example of a problem.
They don't need you at all. They need your phone. They can type in your name. They don't need you.
Correct. And so the challenge in designing something that is easier to use is we do want a device that can stand in for the user. And that's why I don't I don't mean to keep coming back to Squirrel, but till this thing is out of my brain, that's where I'm living. But so that's why Squirrel prompts you every single time for only once for your full password, but then it re-encrypts the first N characters, and you can decide how large N is. And it keeps that in RAM. It never writes it anywhere. So every single time that you want to log in, you just get a little dialogue to confirm the name of the server where you're logging in, and you type click, 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 click. Just like the first 4 characters of your password, and you're done. It's not like people are logging in 2 times a minute. I mean, when you think about it, you're not really authenticating that often. But the key is you miss that once, and it wipes it out of RAM. So now you have to provide your full password again. So it's I worked to come up with a secure compromise where it wouldn't get in your way, yet it truly would be a way for you to authenticate the device to then stand in for you, which is the power we're giving devices in this sort of a loop like Yahoo has implemented. But even in this day and age, it's just like, we'll just send you an SMS. Good luck.
We should point out you don't have to use this, right? It's opt-in.
Correct. And they do have 2-factor authentication. So the problem is, as you said, Leo, people aren't going to understand the danger. They're going to go, oh, this is new. This has just been announced. This must, Yahoo must have figured out something to make this safe. It's like, yeah, right. Your authorities the authorities get your phone, and they're now able to log you in to Yahoo. If you choose this option.
I don't think they even need your phone, because can't they do a pen register and just get your text message?
Exactly. You are able to pull past messages received.
It really is a pretty straightforward process.
Although I'm sure that it has a short lifetime and a single use function, so that you're only able, I hope it has those features, so that it would expire and immediately expires when you use it.
Somebody makes an excellent point, though. If the system you use has some form of SMS password recovery, that would be no more secure than this, if that worked to recover the password with just a text message.
Yeah, that is a good point. Yeah. If you say, I don't remember my password.
Would you send me a text?
Yeah.
We got to get rid of passwords. We really do.
We do.
Yeah.
We do.
It's just a bad system.
So this article... this whole issue of the live.fi certificate that got loose. Microsoft's all in a froth now, and they're sending out special notices, and everyone's running around. I have some technology. I'm pointing to it on the screen here, which monitors Chrome's CRL sets, which is, of course, the very controversial, very weak revocation mechanism that Chrome now has. We went over this in depth and I got into it with Google, of course, when I realized how worthless this was. But the one thing they do is at the very top of that file are hard-coded revoked certificates. I'm somewhat dubiously proud to be number 5 in the list.
Oh, wow.
For my revoked, remember, revoked.grc.com, so they added me manually when people said, oh, look, Chrome has a bug. And so they, took me out, and it's like, okay, fine. And so I changed my certificate, and now I'm back again, and they never changed their header. So that revoked certificate that I'm no longer using is still revoked, and maybe it's always going to be there. I don't know, but I'm no longer revoked because I just changed my cert. But anyway, for the longest time, it had 8 entries. This morning, about an hour ago, 9th popped up, and I got a notification from the monitor. Hey, the blocked, they call it blocked SPKIs changed, and there's a number 9, and this must be the certificate that everyone's running around like crazy about. So here's the story, though. This is really not Komodo's fault. Any certificate service could have made this mistake. And it's really not the certificates. So my point is, it's not the CA's fault in any way. And I'll also note, just as an aside, I was a little surprised when I was doing some background research. Komodo is running around flapping their wings because as of February 17th, I think the blog post of the founder said, they are now the #1 certificate provider on the internet.
What? Wow.
For the first time in historically, for 20 years, it had been VeriSign.
Right.
And of course, VeriSign, they were the certificate provider. Symantec purchased them some years ago, but you still get to them at verisign.com. They had always been #1. They had been tied, and now Komodo has passed them by as the #1 certificate provider on the internet, which, I don't think says anything in particularly useful about them. They're the last provider I would use for a certificate because, for example, they're the Superfish people also, and all of the
No.
Commodia.
They don't do Commodia. They do something similar. They use Commodia in one of their things, not Superfish though.
Correct. Oh, okay, right.
Komodo does I forgot what it's called, but they have a equally horrible.
That's you're right.
Program.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the problem. When you go to any certificate provider, certificate authority, and say, I want a cert for my site, they say, okay, you need to prove you're in control of that domain. So what does that mean? How could you do that? For example, they can give you some text which you put on a certain page. I've seen this. They'll give you a crazy looking page name, some GUID looking thing, just gibberish .html, and say, put this on your root and let us know when you have. And so then their automation will go check for that page on that domain, and if it's there, it proves you're somebody who has control of the web server of that domain. And so they go, okay, you proved it. So we'll give you a certificate in order to add TLS, HTTPS encryption to that site. But if you'd rather, you could just use email. They say, just make sure that you're able to receive email from admin, administrator, postmaster, hostmaster, or webmaster at domain, whatever your domain is, .whatever. And so, these are the traditional webmaster or domain master sort of admin accounts. Admin, administrator, postmaster, hostmaster, and webmaster. Those are the options that Komodo offers, although all of the CAs offer variations on that. So, just because this guy in Finland was curious, he thought he had an account with Microsoft's Live service. In this case, it was live.fi. So and the email service allowed you to set up aliases. And he said, what if I try to set up an alias for Hostmaster?
Oh.
And it let him.
Oh.
So he then became able to receive email sent to Hostmaster. That's all this was.
Wow.
And then he goes to Komodo because, they're now #1.
I'm the Hostmaster.
And he says, I'd like to have a certificate, an SSL domain certificate for live.fi. And they go, okay, yeah, we do that. Prove that you're in control. And they say, what email would you like us to send your authentication challenge to? And he said, let's use Hostmaster at live.fi.
Whoa.
Email came in. He clicked the link in
Whoa.
the email. They said, yay, you qualify. Give us your $25 and we'll send you a certificate. That's what this was. And any other CA would have done it.
Oh, my God.
So the mistake...
Is Microsoft at fault for letting you create a hostmaster address?
Well, yeah, I think so. I mean,
shouldn't do that.
So the real problem is that, and I love Dan Gooden has written a number of pieces about this in Ars Technica, and one line that I liked in his most recent note, he said, "The ease in obtaining such certificates and the difficulty in killing them off once they're issued are potent reminders of the continued insecurity of one of the internet's most important security mechanisms." And so the real fault is that it is that easy. Yeah. It is that authentication of domain control is as weak as it is, as weak as receiving an email to one of a number of preset accounts. Now, what this means is, of course, to protect themselves, everybody who has an email system where users can create aliases or their own accounts absolutely must block all possible common names that any CA might use. That's the problem. There's no standard. Komodo, I've never seen admin before, or even administrator. They just made those up. But postmaster, certainly. Hostmaster, okay. Webmaster, yes. But administrator or admin? So the problem is this particular CA added a couple, but so to be secure against how trivially easy it is to authenticate via email, you'd have to make sure that you, the domain controller, went around and looked at every policy of every CA, and I mean that includes the Hong Kong Post Office, and make sure that you have blocked anyone acquiring any of those email addresses. Because if you don't, someone can, and they will prove to the system that they own it, and off they go. Unbelievable. Now, Windows 8 and on has added an automatic updater for revoked certificates. It is available but not installed by default for Vista and 7, and also the server-side versions of that, Server 2008 and Server 2008 R2. So I have a note here, I have a link in the show notes to the automatic updater. If you're using 8 or later, you're already covered. If you're not, that is, if you're on 7 or Vista, it's probably worth adding this. It's a little lightweight gizmo, a little service that runs in the background, which will then from now on automatically allow Microsoft to revoke any certs of this sort that happen. This doesn't happen often. There's a grand total of 9, and I'm one of them on Chrome's bad guy list. So it's not like there are a lot of these, but when they happen, they tend to panic a lot of people. And of course, everyone ran around. Even though this one guy had the cert, he could have said, "Hey, look, I didn't give it to anybody. Here, I'll shred it." And, oh my God, no! And so everybody's, all the browsers now have to scramble around and make sure that they don't, that this didn't actually somehow get out and go somewhere else. When it was this easy to do all along, which is, again, the wake-up call for this whole system. Note that none of this works for EV. That is, it only works for domain. On the other hand, the problem is that having a redundant domain certificate is fine. That is, the live.fi might have been protected, probably is, by a legitimate Microsoft extended validation cert. But that doesn't mean that the domain cert isn't just as good, because that level of verification is all you're asserting. And as we've said on this podcast before, it ain't much. And this story just goes to prove it.
Wow.
Okay, now, InstantCryptor. These are the guys. It's www.instantcryptor.com. and you'll find a new little blurb on their page acknowledging indirectly our coverage of this a couple weeks ago. Remember that screenshot? I had a picture of Notepad, Leo, a couple weeks ago, where it was just all full of crazy Chinese characters because I had decrypted with a different password, and InstantCryptor wasn't verifying the password in any way, which meant that if you misentered it, you got gibberish back. And I said, what that means is all they're doing is hashing the password to create a key and using the key with AES and cipher blockchaining to encrypt the file, which is fine and all, but it's really not the way it ought to be. For one thing, you're not able to detect any modification to the file, which you'd really like to have. What is necessary, I explained, was known as authenticated encryption, where you're both authenticating and encrypting, and there are a number of ways to do that. So yesterday, I saw a tweet from CloudRail, who are the guys behind this, and they said at SGGRC, "Thanks for your feedback about InstantCryptor. We've updated it according to your advice to make it even more secure. Any feedback?" And unfortunately, here comes the feedback.
Oh, boy. You asked.
Yeah, and I also found in my mailbag when I was doing pulling the Q&A questions together, an email. That was subject was feedback on instantcryptor.com from Mannheim, Germany. And the email read, "Hello, Steve. One of your listeners, who calls himself Advait from India, has made us aware that you've discussed InstantCryptor in your podcast. I'm the main developer behind this product and was eager to learn of your opinion. In fact, we've modified the encryption procedure such that now the plain text plus a hash value of that very plain text is input for AES CBC encryption, which allows us to check upon decryption if the password used was correct and if the message has been modified, except it doesn't. I'd be happy," Florian goes on, "to get feedback from your side and could provide you with more details. Feel free to contact me under the mentioned email address." Okay, so what they did was it was another good effort. But this is another, the underlying lesson here is stop trying to invent cryptography. That is, we're done with that phase. As I have said often, there's nothing more. There may be more bits, and then every decade or two we get some major breakthrough. The way we got elliptic curve after RSA, but that was a long time ago, and now it's only now beginning to roll out. And the ways we put these pieces, the way the blocks are assembled, that's all done now too. But these guys sort of did another ad hoc solution, which it turns out is wrong. So what they do is you upload, or I'm sorry, not upload, because this all happens in your browser. You point your browser at the file you wish to encrypt. What they were doing was simply encrypting it and then sending it up to the cloud. Now they're doing an SHA 256. That is, they're doing a digital signature of the file, sticking that on the end of the file, then encrypting the blob. And that's what they send up. And their logic was, and their logic was correct, but unfortunately not thorough, is that when they brought the blob back down into your browser and you gave it a password, it would use that password to decrypt the blob, which should return the original plain text and the SHA 256, which is 256 bits or 32 bytes, tacked onto the end. Then if they run SHA 256 again on all but the last 32 bytes, they should wind up with the same result as those last 32 bytes. That is to say that hash of the preceding file, the digest, should match. And it's certainly the case that if you entered the password wrong, that is, if you used a different password, you would get gibberish, and there's absolutely no chance that a hash of that gibberish would hash to the gibberish, the different gibberish at the end. So this does detect I mean, be careful with this because there's so much it doesn't detect. It does detect a different key used to decrypt. It turns out, though, that solid as we would think this is, there are well-known ways to fool it. If it were possible to get the user to upload something malicious, for example, it's possible to insert that malicious different stuff into this one and have it go undetected. That is, there are well understood means in the crypto world for circumventing this solution. And I knew that was the case, but I thought, okay, I need something I can explain clearly. So I shot a note off to a friend of the podcast, Taylor Hornby, who's AKA Fire Xware, who has his site defuse.ca, defuse.ca. And I said, hey, Taylor, here's the situation. I brought him quickly up to speed. He was a few episodes behind, so he hadn't run across this yet. And I told him, I said, I'm looking for the succinctest way of explaining how this is wrong. And so he said, the quick answer is that it's well known how to forge messages under this scheme. That is where you hash you use an unkeyed hash and then you encrypt. Right? And that's part of the problem here is that SHA-256 is not keyed. So bad guys, and that you can intuitively get it that anyone who wanted the hash to balance can make the hash balance by changing the cryptographic content and then rebalancing the hash. And the math behind this makes your eyes crossed. But this is nothing for the cipher guru people. They're able to pull this off. So he said, the attack is pretty neat. It's explained in the second part of this answer. Then he provided me a link to stackexchange.com where some of this sort of math is shown. And he said, the more complete answer is that today the burden of being called secure is to have been proven secure in what's known formally, because the other thing that's neat about cryptography now is this is all this stuff has moved into formal academic land. So it's called an indistinguishability / non-malleability model. And there's even some like symbology for this. It's IND-CCA2, and then he provides a Wikipedia link to ciphertext indistinguishability. And he says the dominant attitude today, and here's the real takeaway, the dominant attitude today is that instead of finding and fixing individual problems, we just outright refuse to accept anything that isn't proven IND-CCA2 secure. And that's this indistinguishability under adaptive chosen ciphertext attack. That's what this approach is still victim to. He says that's the important lesson. You can't iterate on crypto design by fixing problems that come up. You have to start with something proven secure. And we have things that are proven secure. And he ended by saying the Telegram Messenger is another example of ignoring this lesson because, again, they just sort of made something up. And so the way to do this right, and I will forward this text to Florian since he was kind enough to write to me and tweet me and provide this content for the show, is the only way to do this, and you've also heard me say this, is encrypt then hash. That is, encrypt then authenticate. This is the problem that SSL made back in the early days. For these guys to do this right, they would encrypt the message under a key derived from the user's password. Then they HMAC, and that's a keyed, it's the HMAC is a hashed message authentication code where you give it a key. And the point is, there's no way for the bad guys to know what that key is. The key you derive also from the password, from the user's password. Maybe just run, they're going to run the password through SHA-256. Just run it through SHA-256 again in order to create a key which you use for the HMAC. So then you key this HMAC, and that produces a SHA-256-esque hash, which is the authentication code that you tack on the end. So the result is no bigger than it is right now in what these guys are doing. Yet, because you've encrypted first and you've authenticated that encrypted result with a keyed HMAC using a different key than the encryption key, that is utterly tamper-proof. And then when you receive the blob, the first thing you do, because the last thing you did when you were generating it was to authenticate, the first thing you do when you're going to decrypt it is authenticate that there was no change to what you've received, and then you use the key from the password to decrypt the file. So, and if everyone would just do that, this is what I meant when I said this problem has been solved. If you do that, if you encrypt, then authenticate with a keyed hash, then you get what Taylor explains is this crazy indistinguishability under adaptive chosen ciphertext attack proof solution. And I will mention, this is me speaking, not Taylor, that he consults. He loves auditing people's crypto. He really enjoys it. So, Florian, if you're hearing this, I will mention this in my note to you that follows. But it's defuse.ca, defuse.ca. And Taylor would, I'm sure, love to help. He did dig into your code a little bit and confirm the things that I had said. So he's already up to speed.
He's a good man.
Now, because we've talked so much about the Large Hadron Collider and that
Particle Fever.
Fabulous movie, Particle Fever, I just thought
Which
I would
is
note.
free on Netflix now, by the way.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it really? Oh, fantastic. And everybody, if you are a Netflix subscriber and you have not yet seen Particle Fever, please, 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 you will, this is the one I talked about a year ago where I came out of the theater and the elderly friend of mine who I went with, and I simultaneously said, that's the best $5 I ever spent. I mean, because it's a little small art theater, and they weren't asking for a ton of money, and it was a matinee, and it's $5, and wow, I mean, it was really interesting. Anyway, with that lead-in, they are in the middle, after having been down for 2 years for refitting and beefing up, essentially. They are in the careful process now of bringing the LHC back online at the highest power level it has ever operated. It was running at 8 TeV, that's trillion electron volts.
Oh, it sounds like a lot.
I know. And they're adding 5 to that. So they will be at 13 TeV. Now, 8 TeV, essentially the level at which this operates, that is the power at which this runs, determines their ability, essentially how much they can see. And they were able to prove the existence of the famous Higgs boson 2 years ago. And in 2013, Peter, who was still around, shared the Nobel Prize for its discovery. Although Nobel waited until it actually had been discovered, but he hypothesized. He said there has to be this thing here, even though no one had ever seen one. He says it's got to be there. Well, it took them smashing stuff together, photons, at 8 trillion electron volts in order to finally see the Higgs boson. Now they're going to 13 because what they want to find is something that surprises them. So far, the standard model is holding up, but there's this there still remains questions. What's up with this dark matter, that most of the universe seems to be made of, but we can't find it anywhere? And, which is to say, the model says there must be dark matter in the same way that the model said there must be the Higgs boson. Well, they found that, but they haven't found the dark matter yet. But maybe that means there's a glitch in the model. Who knows? The model is the most successful thing that physics has ever created. It's done so much. The so-called standard model. Anyway, what they're hoping is that essentially it's like they're turning up the resolution on their scope. They're going from 18 trillion electron volts to 13, and they don't know what they're going to find, but they hope some stuff they cannot explain, because it will then be up to them to explain it. And in doing so, they're going to learn something. So far, they've managed to prove something and demonstrate that this crazy experiment, is bearing fruit, which I just think is so very cool.
Well, not fruit, but bosons anyway.
Wait a minute. Let's see. There's well, I was wondering if there are any fruit names in there, because we have charm and we've got, all the quirks had like these weird designations, spin and charm and so forth. Yeah. I don't think we have bananas and pears. And
I don't think so.
And I don't think so.
It is like accepted that they confirmed that the boson exists. That's not a question.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Yeah, they did. And Peter got his Nobel. And
I guess you get a Nobel Prize. That's confirmation enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you?
So I was going to say something about Barack and the Peace Prize, but I thought no,
please. Before you get to Spinrite, I know you want to do that, but a couple of questions I had for you, and maybe something we can talk about down the road, or maybe it's in the questions. Actually, I haven't looked at the questions. Google's new OAuth solution. Some people in the chat room are asking about that.
Didn't know there was one.
All right. So I don't either. So we'll have to look into that. And then we've talked about bad USB before, and a number of people have raised this issue.
It is in the questions.
Okay. We'll get to it.
Yes.
Good. All right.
Yes. I was raving about the MacBook last week and how, about this one connector. And it really, what we're going to need, I'll give people a tease. We're going to need a condom.
Okay, I have a Snuglet. Will that do?
I don't know.
All right,
we're gonna need a USB charging condom, which we'll discuss here in a minute.
Oh, that's
in
a
the
good
meantime.
idea. Yeah.
In the meantime, Spinrite. Just as a little quickie in the keeping with the spirit of the Q&A, Brandon asked from Wisconsin. He said Spinrite GPT/EFI/UEFI. He said, I'm a longtime listener and user of your products. It all started for me with Shields Up, and I've been wondering about your future ideas for Spinrite. I know that you're rewriting it for much faster speeds and all sorts of wonderful features we've heard about, but I don't believe anyone's brought up the compatibility side of things. Are you planning on updating Spinrite to work with GPT formatted drives? That's the GUID partition table, as opposed to the so-called MBR, the master boot record format, drives that Spinrite 6 doesn't agree with because they are MBR followed by EFI. And are you planning on adding UEFI boot support? So I just thought I'd be explicit, since I guess I hadn't mentioned it before. Yes, Spinrite's full support for the Mac, among other things, requires that. And even later model PCs with Windows I think at least 7, certainly 8, and beyond. Everything's moved to UEFI booting rather than the old style BIOS, and to drives using this GPT because they've got much larger fields. The problem with the old master boot record format is that it had a partition size limit of 32 bits worth of sectors. And 32 bits worth of sectors, that's, of course, it's once upon a time seemed like, we're never going to get there, 4.3 billion. But 4.3 billion times 512 bytes per is about 2.2 terabytes. And we now know that there are partitions bigger than that. So drives drives and OSs and everybody have been forced into a format that allows greater than 32-bit descriptors, which is what the GPT does. And so Spinrite will be 100% aware of all of that stuff and be able to run on drives of probably, it's safe to say now, any size. Although I have said that before and been wrong. So it's a little bit like Gates saying no one will ever need more than 640K of RAM, because no, that was 10 times what the Apple II had, and surely that's enough.
It's got to be plenty.
Yeah.
Got to be enough. We got questions. And I know you have answers. Before we do that, though, can I mention our folks at ITProTV? We love these guys, Tim and Don. In fact, I think they're going to be in town soon. We're going to get together, have a beer, talk about old times back in the early days of ITProTV last year when they were just getting started. They had come to a NAB panel I did a few years ago with the TriCaster guys, and they said, hey, you know, they were already IT trainers. They said, we should do what Leo's doing with Twit, but we should do it for IT training. And ITProTV was born. Now, here we are a year later. They've grown so fast. Not only, sign up tons of students because it really works, but also add so many courses. And they do it just like we do, live. So you can chat with them. You can interact. It's fun to watch. And you will be learning things like IT fundamentals or A+ certs or Security Plus, Microsoft's Windows certifications, Cisco's certifications, the new ISC squared security certifications. Hey, you want to learn to be a certified ethical hacker? ITProTV has just announced that Sean Philip Oriano is their subject matter expert for the CEH. That's their most requested course to date. He's an expert in a lot of areas of security. They know you listen to this show for security, and they know you'd probably be interested in getting that certified ethical hacker cert. Well, guess what? Get ready, because they'll be streaming the shows live beginning Monday from 9 to 4 Eastern through Friday, April 3rd for 2 weeks. And you're invited to attend for free. ITProTV's live stream is available to everyone. You do need to set up a free basic account. So join them for 2 weeks of certified ethical hacking with Sean Philip Oriano. He has taught for both enterprise and military clients. This is a great subject. I want to do this. I wish I could take those 2 weeks off. I'd love to get this cert or just learn the stuff. Streamed live and on demand worldwide. They've got Roku, Chromecast, your computer or mobile device. If you subscribe for a year, ITProTV will let you download the files, put them wherever you want to go so you can go offline. They've got courses in Office. They've got courses in project management, VMware, technical skills. They're really growing like crazy. PowerShell. Look, here's an email encryption course using OpenPGP. Holy cow. I love this. Clients are all over. HP, UCSD, Stanford, MIT. There's corporate and group pricing. You get with your subscription, and I'll tell you how much that costs. It's not much. You also get the Measure Up practice exams. That's worth $79. A virtual machine sandbox lab environment you can use with any HTML5 browser, so you can set up your own Windows server and clients. You get interaction with the host via chat. The on-air stuff is so cool. It's like what we do. It's just neat. There's a live stream SMS, so you'll get a text message when it's time. This is so great. Now, let me tell you, it costs, well, there's a basic account that's free, lets you watch live on the web and on Roku. There's a premium account that's $57 a month, or you can buy the annual, $570 a year. But I've got a really good deal for you. If you visit itpro.tv/security now, you can get a 7-day free trial. And using the offer code SN30, you'll also get 30% off, not for the first month or year, but forever, for the lifetime of your account. Now we're talking less than $40 a month. SN30 is the offer code at itpro.tv/security now. And if nothing else, sign up for that free account and study for the Certified Ethical Hacker cert. I would just love to learn this stuff from Sean Philip Oriano. You got to do this. itpro.tv/security now. And don't forget, if you decide to sign up, SN30 will save you 30% off for the life of your account. I don't even know what's in this Certified Ethical Hacker stuff. It just sounds like that would be so cool to take that course. I don't know exactly.
Well, we need ethical hackers. So.
Yeah. Well, we need 1 million new ethical hackers next year for law enforcement alone.
Yeah, I think that's what's so neat about the forensic side of this is basically you get to have as much fun as the hacker, but it's like mysteries that you're solving of how this stuff got in and what happened and so forth. Yeah. Two things. While you were reading that, I just checked my Twitter feed, and Simon Zarafa sent a note saying that the Axion, AXION, apparently is a candidate for the dark matter particle. There's a Wikipedia entry. It says the Axion is a hypothetical elementary particle postulated by the Pecky-Quinn theory in 1977 to resolve the strong CP problem, we all know about that, in quantum chromodynamics. I hate those quantum chromodynamics problems, especially when there's strong CP.
Oh, yeah.
If axions exist, and at least they gave it a good name, and have low mass within a specific range, they are of interest as a possible component of cold dark matter. And this thing goes on and on and on. So whoa. But, good. Whatever that is.
Sounds important. That's all I could say.
Yeah.
Sounds like 18 trillion electrovolts might not be enough. We need more power.
If I add 7 to today's date, the 17th, I get March 24th, which strikes me as the last day that voting is open for the podcast awards.
Well, get in there. It's not too late.
So that means that this is the second to the last podcast in which I'll ever be able to annoy and remind and bother people that I would love to win for Best Technical
Come
Podcast.
on, everybody. Let's get him in there.
And it is necessary, by the way, to check your verification email if you haven't, because they are sending out verification emails in order to make sure that you're not like making up a new email address every time. So you have to click a link in the verification email in order to prove that you're legitimate. I found one in my own.
Have that sent to hostmaster@live.fi, and we'll make sure to count your
And somebody at Microsoft will happily click on that.
But you can. So is that eliminate the vote often thing? You have to, or you?
No,
can,
they
you
still want you to come back and vote more, and they say you can do it every day. And so some people have been really neat. They've been tweeting reminders out to the people who are following SGGRC. So I really appreciate that.
If you don't win this, we've failed. We have failed in every way possible.
One way or the other, I'll never mention it again, either in humiliation or in glory.
Okay, good. Ready? Question 1 has arrived. Message for you, sir. Winfield, a listener in the U.S., wonders about freezing his credit. The cold, dark heart of his Axion. I just listened to your piece on freezing credit reports. I'm curious what your opinion is on services such as LifeLock, lifelock.com. Also, and I have an opinion which I will share with you about that. Good. Also, wouldn't freezing one credit reporting bureau be enough instead of all of 3? If you freeze one and have an issue with others, doesn't the one that's frozen prove to the others they're incorrect? Yeah, if only.
Yeah,
I've not had an issue, but certainly do worry about the potentials. Thanks for the terrific show and information.
So we'll get to LifeLock in a second. I wanted to say that unfortunately, the way the bureaus operate is
independently.
Sort of independently.
Yeah.
And a credit granting organization normally has a relationship with only one. So, for example, a bank or a car dealer or a loan shark or whoever, I don't know. They'll be have an account with Experian or with TransUnion, and so they always go to TransUnion in order to check someone's credit. That's what they do. So, unfortunately, it sounds like Winfield is hoping to sort of like cheap out his solution by only freezing one and spending $10 or at least in California, rather than 3 and spending $30 total. But unfortunately, you really do need to lock them all. So tell us about LifeLock, Leo.
So I actually been a LifeLock customer for years. In fact, I bought it for my kids, too, because a kind of worst case scenario on identity theft is that your kids' socials get compromised because that's a lifetime. right?
Yes.
And so I did it for both.
We're so old, it doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah, right. At this point, I don't need good credit.
We're not buying that much.
I don't need good credit as much as, they have a lifetime ahead of them of credit that they're going to need. LifeLock is sometimes controversial. I don't think it's controversial. I'll explain where the controversy comes from.
In the old days, right? Because I think they overstated what they were doing. And
I don't think they did. So here's what happened. What they chiefly did was they would put fraud alerts on your accounts. Was one of the things they would do immediately. And Experian and Equifax and TransUnion didn't like that so much because if there's a fraud alert on your account, they can't issue credit cards. You won't get those credit card offers in the mail, and that's a big revenue source for the credit unions.
Wait, I can stop those offers by putting a fraud alert on my account?
Absolutely. So they used to do it. So the credit unions, I think, in my opinion, and there's some evidence for this, but it's it's murky because nobody's saying what happened. But in my opinion, the credit unions, and we've seen this happen in other cases, ganged up on and got states' attorney generals to sue LifeLock. Okay. For mostly and the FTC for exactly what you said, overstating their capabilities. I don't think they did. However, they got enough judgments against them that they have, and I know this because they've been an advertiser on the radio show in the past, and I think we never had them on the podcast, but I happily endorse them because I know they work. But they have gotten so gun shy they can't say anything anymore. So their ads are horrible. I keep telling them, guys, nobody's going to buy this product because they cannot tell you what they do because of their wrists are tied by these various judgments. Wow. So what they've done, which I think is fantastic, they bought one of the biggest, if not the biggest, back-end providers for credit cards that does the analytics that credit card companies use to detect fraud. Credit card companies use this company that LifeLock owns to do fraud detection.
Right.
So as a result, LifeLock has jacked into the flow of credit card transactions from almost everybody, basically. And so they notify you in the same way that they notify Visa and MasterCard, saying,
if somebody's applying.
Saying, we know what's going on, because they can no longer put the fraud alerts on. They were stopped. And so, but they do other things. They do analytics that I think are, really very, very valuable. It's controversial. It's not cheap. And I think, one complaint is, I don't want to spend all that much money. And I would understand that.
And it is an annual fee.
It's an annual fee. I do it because I'm a public figure, and so presumptively it may be more of a target than others.
Yep.
So by the way, I've never had a problem, and I found them to be very, very good. They will do other things. You're also buying insurance to help you if you do get identity fraud and things like that. But I believe that they, in fact, do exactly what they say they do. In fact, they do more because they've been hogtied by these judgments against them. So they can't really tell you what they do. I keep saying, you got to tell people about this. We can't. It's like, but this is great. We can't. So they became an enemy. In my opinion, what happened is they became an enemy of the credit unions, the credit reporting, not credit unions, the credit reporting agencies.
Right.
And because they were effective, in fact. And so I think, let's put it this way. I use it. I can't prove that I need it, but I've never had a problem. They've been very quick. I check.
And is it like $49 a year, that kind of thing?
Yeah, maybe more than that because I have the kids involved. It's not a huge amount. Maybe it's $150 with the kids. I can't remember exactly. You can log in. You can see a lot of information that you wouldn't see otherwise. I feel like they do the right things. $10 a month, somebody's saying, Pack Rat.
Okay.
And I'm not sure I would recommend that for everybody. If you're willing to take the time to pay attention, you get your credit. You can get an annual credit report for free. If you're ever turned down from credit, you could get that. If you don't want to get LifeLock, you need to do all that. You need to get your credit report every year. You need to check. You need to be proactive. You need to have the great time calling the credit unions, credit reporting agencies. They've automated that now. There's no human, and it's not a very pleasant process. So. If you can do a credit freeze, do it, but they really don't want to do it because it costs them money, in effect.
Yeah.
If you've had problems, though, you can get it. So LifeLock Ultimate is $30 a month. The base package is $10 a month. I think I I'm doing it all. I can't remember, though, exactly what I'm doing.
Why are we not surprised?
Well,
Ultimate. At least you're not doing the gold watch. So,
no, but I feel like I feel like I am I could be a target. And so
no, I agree.
There's certain things I do that I do that don't necessarily recommend everybody do. And that's
and your nature is to be very open and just sort of forthright and here's where I am.
I was on the show that I accidentally flashed my Amex card on the screen.
Yeah.
That worked out well.
I never tell anyone I'm going to be out of town until I get back, and then I say I was. It's just standard security protocol.
Yeah, I think if you do the freezes, it ends up costing you so much money that you might as well just do LifeLock, frankly. But
well, I did. I froze all three for $10 each, and I'm really happy
for
that
how
I
long
did that.
Though? Like every 3 months, you have to do that?
No, it's ever. Period. You
really
pay it once. You pay it once, and you're locked until you need to unlock it.
That's good.
Yeah, I for me, that's the perfect solution. At my point in life, I'm not buying anything that I need credit for. I don't want anyone messing with my credit, so I just locked all three of them.
Yeah.
It's a one-time payment of $10 in California. It varies by state.
It's the kind of thing that we can do because we don't get, we're not applying for credit cards, buying cars, buying houses. If you're doing a lot of stuff like that, it's a pain.
Because then you need to pay. You need to then do $10 for an exception to that, and that starts to add up.
Right. Freeze lifts vary by state, and if you have to pay when you're shopping for credit, it's worth it. Okay, even if you have to pay. Just a planning issue, says Mark in our chat room. Question 2. I'm glad. That's a great question, by the way. We've never really addressed that, so thank you.
Yep.
Jesse in Easton, Maryland, some input on HTTP2 mandatory TLS. And if you listen to this show, that all makes sense. The Packet Pushers podcast recently covered HTTP2, and their host mentioned that mandatory TLS in HTTP2 was removed from the spec because of concerns from ISPs. It would impact their ability to provide caching as well as super cookies if all web pages were encrypted. And the IETF working group had initially proposed mandatory encryption. Just want to know your thoughts on that. Love the podcast. Been fans of you and Leo since the Tech TV days and Spinrite user for 10 years. Remember, I interviewed Vince Cerf and asked him if there's anything he would change. He was the father of the internet, and he said the one thing we would have changed, we would have built in encryption into all of these protocols.
Yes.
So
it would have been difficult way back then because it was I mean, well, first of all, we're still trying to get it right today.
Right.
I mean, people are still like, "Oh no, you can't do compression because there's a beast attack and if you change if you twiddle something, then we see how it compresses differently and then we can reverse engineer." I mean, it's just staggering how difficult some of these things are to get right. But I just thought it was interesting. I like this question because it was I made the point of noting when we were talking about the evolution of Speedy into HTTP2 that whereas Speedy was it was exclusively encrypted, we lost that when we went to HTTP2, and assuming that Jesse knows of which he speaks, and I assume he does, it certainly does make sense that there are still people who have not given up on unencrypted web connections. ISPs would like the ability to cache in order to reduce their bandwidth. But, I mean, anybody who has that in part of their business model today, or super cookies, for example, needs to absolutely give that up. They need to, if nothing else, plan from this moment on that connections will be opaque to them, and do whatever you have to. Add routers, add bandwidth, but, plan for the idea that your customers will be connecting directly to the servers and you're not going to be able to see into it. Because that's the way it's going to go, whether it's in the spec or not, whether HTTP2 can optionally be unencrypted. I mean, it makes sense that it should be because it'll be really fast. I mean, we saw that adding encryption and this compression and the binary protocol that is added in HTTP2 is makes the system work so well that it completely removes the overhead of encryption. So if you had no encryption overhead and had HTTP2 unencrypted, that would be even faster. And browsers are still going to support it. Web servers are still going to support it. So there'll be a place for it, but more and more websites are just going to be encrypted because users are going to want that more. So, the web is going encrypted, like it or not. And I think everybody pretty much likes it, except those people who are one way or another counting on it in some model not being encrypted. And that's, of course, the NSA and ISPs and Verizon, who wants to put a super cookie on your stuff as it heads out onto the internet.
Yeah. Kyle Day in Dallas, Texas. I think it's a typo. In Dallas, Texas. He wonders, Steve, how could Squirrel be used for multiple account logins to the same domain? All the usual praise for you and Leo. Seriously, your podcasts are worth more than free. Well, they're free because we got great advertisers, so you don't have to pay for them, but they do. I have a question about your Squirrel solution. I've listened to all your podcast episodes. I never quite picked up on one thing you may have already covered. How does Squirrel handle logging into multiple accounts on a single domain? For example, with my current password manager, I have both my and my wife's logins saved to iCloud.com. Could be any domain, of course. Using my current password manager, I would navigate to iCloud.com, select which login, mine or my wife's, that I want it to populate and log me in with. I do the same thing with Google. I have several Gmail accounts. I think 8. So I get to choose. But how would Squirrel handle multiple logins to the same domain? As I understand it, the single Squirrel identity is what identifies me to the website server. Is it possible to identify as someone else or maybe a second account that I own? I have a PayPal business and a PayPal personal account, but they're both accessed at the same domain. They're both my own personal accounts. How am I going to manage multiple Squirrel identities to accomplish this? Thanks, Kyle.
This question caught me because just in the last week, we finalized that the way of doing that. There are two different there are sort of two different concepts in Squirrel. What Squirrel promotes, as everyone knows, is the idea that one identity can be used potentially for your entire life. That is, you could very likely create a Squirrel identity with GRC's client and export that to your iOS or your Android or your Mac or wherever, or create an identity on any of those and cross-export them. The point being they would all have the same identity so that you would be known as the same pseudonymous entity at any site, no matter which one of your devices you were using. But this is per domain. So this is what Kyle is asking is, what if I want two accounts, if I myself, my identity, want two accounts at the same domain? And what we have is we're still not sure what we're going to call it, a sub-ID or an account ID or an alternate ID. The idea is that, remember I was just saying earlier, that every single time you authenticate, the first time you give it your full password, and then subsequently you can give it a shortcut. We call it the password hint. If you did that, you just get your normal sort of primary account at that domain. If you wish to appear for any reason you have, we're not telling you how or why, you want to just for some reason one time you want to appear to be someone else, or you do want to maintain sort of formally additional accounts of the same domain, there's a button on the dialog that just says account. And so you type in your shortcut, hit the account button, and then anything you want. You could number them 1, 2, 3. You could use ABC. You could use your own little acronym for the second account and third account, and there's no limit. What we do is we take whatever you type in after you press the account button, and that gets added to the hash. So it creates an infinite number of alternative identities for your primary identity at that domain. So it just expands it infinitely. And I'll just mention that this is different than multiple users sharing a computer, because Kyle's question was a little mixed up. For example, he talks about how he and his wife in the two different people mode, Squirrel clients will support multiple like people identities. So in a household who had a shared computer, you could have mom, dad, Bobby and Susie, and their client would show those 4 identities. And so they would choose who they are and then just normally log in under that identity. And then all of those identities, if they wish to, could have multiple accounts under them. So, I mean, we got that. That's in there too. And it's going to end up being very simple and easy to use and give people complete control and freedom.
Cool.
And we'll just hope. We'll get it done. We'll show it to the world, and we'll see what happens.
More and more, it's starting to feel like this is something that needs to happen.
I know.
I mean,
it was a year ago, but it's better late than never.
The threat to you is that somebody like Microsoft or Google or some consortium comes up with some solution, which would not be as good, but it would be some solution.
There is FIDO. FIDO is that. And the problem with FIDO is they didn't know, actually they didn't know. I know that they didn't know because when I ran into Brad Hill at the DigiCert conference, he was stunned by the crypto I was using, which allows me to not require the server to keep my credential. That's what FIDO does, which is so crazy, is you give your credentials to the server to hold for you. Then when you go there, you ask for them back, and then you authenticate against them. It's like, okay, I guess, okay. Anyway, Squirrel doesn't need that. So, which is why Brad was really impressed and said it was the most well-thought-out authentication protocol he'd ever seen. So it's certainly the case that FIDO could happen, but FIDO is device-tied, and even though it's technically an open spec, only one company has ever managed to write the FIDO protocol because it is so complicated. This Knock Knock Labs, they're the only people who have it, and they'd like to make money licensing it. And so when you hear that like Microsoft is going to support it under Windows 10, they licensed the code. Instead, with Squirrel, it is really, I want to say dead simple, except even simple turns out to be complicated. But we've got like 12 or 13 people. I mean, there are test servers up and running, and people are in the process of following my implementation and verifying theirs against mine. So, I mean, we'll see what happens.
Somebody said all you have to do is get Tim Cook to announce it and say it's magical, and you'd be done. Maybe?
That would make my day.
Costas Critsalis in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, wonders about Rowhammer. In the last episode, you discussed Rowhammer, a vulnerability the researchers at Carnegie Mellon discovered, where they could flip a bit or bits on an adjacent row by repeatedly accessing it between refresh cycles 64 milliseconds apart. Additionally, you said the Code Zero group within Google had weaponized it. My question is this: in order to do this, would the code not heed, but I think he means need, to have direct control over the read-write operations and perhaps some level of knowledge exactly as to when the refresh cycles are to occur at the hardware chip level? That being the case, would it not be fairly difficult to take control of this, given there are multiple board chipsets and only 2 manufacturers, Intel and AMD, but many versions of the chipsets? Or do all chipsets basically operate pretty much the same way? Costas.
So I was glad to see this because we were up against a hard out last week. On Thursday, we had Tech News Tonight, or Tech News, what do you call it, a morning one?
TNT, Tech News Today.
Today. And so I couldn't spend as much time on Rowhammer as I wanted to. There were a couple points that as a consequence, I left out. First is, since then, there's already been some news. Linus has submitted a change to Linux, which will remove that visibility into a non-privileged application's port mapping. I mentioned that last week as being crucial to this. The application has to have access to its own page table in order to know where to hammer in order to change a row. And so the quickest remediation for this flaw is to take that away from non-privileged processes, and that's been submitted into the official Linux tree. The other really tricky thing is exactly as Costas says, is that you, in order to hammer the row, you have to bypass everything the system has done to keep this from happening. That is, I mentioned at the beginning of my discussion this last week, how slow dynamic RAM has remained. It cannot get sped up in the same way that all of our static silicon processing has. As a consequence, processing speed has just shot past it. The only thing engineers have been able to do is caching. And of course, everyone is familiar with L1, L2, L3 cache and so forth. There's even cache in the RAM chip itself. That is, when you read a row, the results of that read are stored so that if you read other things from the row, it won't read them again. And rows are typically about 64 bits long in today's dynamic RAM. And so the idea is that every single bit of caching has to be bypassed in order to hammer on the chip at full speed. The way they do this is there is an instruction that the Intel has that I'm sure AMD must. I'm trying to think whether the ARM architecture does. I think that the ARM doesn't, but Intel does. It's a non-privileged instruction. So one question people had was, why was I think it's CF flush or maybe just C flush, cache flush. But so at the instruction level, the code running basically is in a tight loop. All it's wanting to do is to pound on the two rows back and forth on either side of the target row, and so it does a write to one row, then or does it do a read? I can't remember. Then it flushes the cache in order so that, because what happens is normally when you're reading from dynamic RAM, you bring a block, a so-called a cache line, which is like 64 bytes now, that bring a whole chunk in at once. And so I think they are reading. And so if you're bouncing back and forth between doing reads, you won't be going back to the DRAM every time. You will instead be pulling it out of any of this pipeline of caches, the L1, the L2, or the L3 cache. And that'll be done very, very fastly, very, very quickly, excuse me. The reason, though, that you may sometimes need to explicitly flush the caches, that is, tell the caches to forget what they have, is if you had two processors sharing memory, and these processors might have processes running on them that are sharing a region of memory for like sharing data. So one processor might put something in this shared region, the other one would read that out. Well, before it does that, it needs to flush its local caches so that it's actually reading the physical memory. Otherwise, it'll just be reading out of cache. And so you can't trust that shared region of memory as a communications mailbox unless each processor that is about to look removes any memory it has of what it saw there last. So it actually pulls it from the physical RAM. And anyway, so it's pulling it from the physical RAM is what, it turns out, disturbs the adjacent line or the adjacent row in the cache. And the last part is, none of this works if you have ECC or even parity check memory, which is the other point I didn't have time to talk about last week, which is, for example, in server class machines, you will often have error-correcting memory specifically to absorb these kinds of problems. If a bit flips, the ECC works on a different fashion, but similarly to as the way it does on a hard disk, where it's able to correct a single bit error or reliably detect a 2-bit error within that little chunk of, it's like 8 bytes of memory that it's guarding, and there's an additional byte to protect that and provide the ECC data. So if you are a server class machine with ECC, you never have to worry about this. And even if you just went for parity memory, it'll catch single bit flips as well, though it would not detect 2-bit flips, because that brings the parity back again. So. And the last point I made was that in Google's testing of, was it 24 laptops, they found that they were able to induce these errors in a usable fashion in half of them. And that's why I made the comment that you could imagine this being a part of a toolkit that an attacker would have, where they would have identified which laptops were potential victims, and if they were if their target happened to be one of those known vulnerable laptops, then they could try the Rowhammer attack on it to see if they were able to get control.
Right. Half is not that's better than nothing, I guess. It's not.
Well, and this is a new problem. We didn't have this more than 2 years ago. Right. So we're introducing this new because we keep making the DRAM more dense and the cell size is smaller, and therefore the signal is less large compared to the noise. The so-called signal-to-noise ratio is unfortunately dropping.
Sam Abu El Samid, and by the way, I should know your name, Sam, because I see you all the time. Sam Abu El Samid in Ypsilanti, Michigan. He says, terrorist batteries, nothing new. Nice piece of engineering. As nice a piece of engineering as the new MacBook is, Apple did not invent the stepped battery. Motorola and LG both have used similar batteries in their phones for years. You can see it at androidcentral.com.
So, okay. Thank you.
There's a lot of those. I didn't invent that or this. Apple doesn't have to invent new stuff. It just is an interesting use of it.
Well, and for example, we know that they acquired the fingerprint scanner people,
right,
but boy, they sure turned that into something far more useful than the fingerprint scanner people ever had.
You still going to get a MacBook?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna It's just it's too nice. I'm a little worried about the keyboard. I've been reading reviews. Yeah, and they say that it's a little the little rocky.
There's not much travel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm gonna let Lisa get one and watch. Maybe you and Lisa and watch.
I think I won't pre-order one. I'll wait to go and look at it in the store. When will they be
10th.
in the store? They won't be in the store till the 10th?
Well,
I wonder if I could see one.
You could play with the Force trackpad now because it's in the 13-inch MacBook Pro, but I think you're going to have to wait till the 10th.
I think I'm going to love that regardless. That just sounds like a complete win.
Everybody's raving about that.
Yeah, the haptic feedback tablet.
Yeah.
The trackpad.
It's also a slow processor. I'm really not sure. You can get the haptic feedback on other ones.
I'm not doing 3D modeling or DNA research or anything.
You know what I got?
Check my mail.
You know what changed my attitude on all this? I got the new Chromebook Pixel.
Yes, the Pixel 2, or the new Pixel.
Pixel 2, I guess. Yeah. 2 years down the road, it's much faster, snappier. Boy, what a gorgeous screen, and it does do everything I want. Pretty much. There's a couple things. I can't do photo editing. But again, the MacBook, I might not want to do photo editing.
Does Apple have their stuff on Android yet? Like their Office suite stuff?
Yep, there's web-based versions of Microsoft Office and iWork, Apple's solution.
Wow. I'm just thinking of Jenny. This might really be the right thing for Jenny.
Boy, from a security point of view, it's incredible. First of all, it's got a TPM chip. They sign everything. You can't modify, you can't access many of the files. You can't just kind of browse around in the directories. It's locked down. And if anything bad goes wrong, they've got this power wash that just wipes it all clean.
But it's not cheap now, is it?
It's $9.99. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what I realized is that I've played with every Chromebook, and by the way, I hated Chromebooks. I hated the whole idea. Didn't get it until I started using them, and I'm starting to get it. And I'm seeing students use it, and I'm starting to get it. But then what happened was a lot of the reasons I didn't like it because they were cheap hardware and it was junky. But if you put it on nice hardware, I use the Chromebook more than anything else now. I'm using it all the time.
Well, and I think it makes sense for somebody who just wants to get their work done, who doesn't want to live for the sake of having a computer, but just wants the computer to let them do what they need to do.
You know, it's wild. It has SSH. So I moved my RSA key over, my private key over.
Right.
Imported it into the SSH module, then deleted
client.
Yep. And now I can SSH to a Linux box. So I've got anything I can do on a Linux box, I can do pretty snappily.
Nice.
So I feel like, I've got everything. I got a chat room in there.
There's probably an open VPN client too, I would imagine.
Oh, I'm sure there is. Yeah. Well, Google also has a remote access solution that you can access any computer remotely. So if I need a Mac, I could access it. I think it's getting better and better. Anyway, I know. People are going, you're crazy, Leo. You need a real computer, a manly computer. That's actually the one thing I miss. I cannot really do programming. I can only do web-based programming. I can't really do real programming. Right.
True.
You know, I can SSH to Emacs and run Lisp, but that's about it. Mike Robles.
Then I mean, your hair that has just come back would fall out.
I actually like Emacs. I used to be a VI guy. I'm kind of coming around.
Yeah, well, you know that when all of the texture of the left and right paren keys has been smoothed off.
You're doing Lisp.
You've been doing Lisp.
I love Lisp. I'm coming around on functional languages. Screw these imperative languages. Anyway, Mike Robles in Wakanda, Illinois, wonders about anti-keystroke logger protection. Steve, longtime listener, I'd like to get your opinion of something called Zamana anti-logger, particularly the free version, Zamana.us. According to Zamana, the software not only protects against keyloggers, but they also claim it prevents SSL intrusion, protects SSL, prevents man-in-the-middle, and monitors fake CAs. It's got good reviews. Have you looked at this? What do you think? By the way, thanks a lot for all you do to promote security awareness. Sincerely, Mike Robles.
So, if it could wash the dishes and my car... I sort of tripped over this one because these are the sorts of claims which are difficult to really honor. For example, okay, first of all, I should say this thing's been around for a while. This keystroke logger is kind of this anti-keystroke logger functionality that it professes. It's sort of funky. Because inside of Windows, there's a long chain of processing that keys go through, which is mostly a testament to the age of Windows. As one thing or another, or someone had a new good idea, they had to keep all the other previous good ideas and add this one to it. And so, as a consequence, there's about 10 different API levels where you can access keystrokes. And they're all targets for attack, where a keystroke logger could get itself. So their claim to fame is they insert something at the very end, or I should say they insert something at each end. They put something way deep down in a driver in the kernel, close to where Windows is finally so tired of processing this keystroke that it gives up, and it says, fine, here it is. And way up at the front, right underneath the key cap itself, so that it catches it before anybody's had a chance to mess with it. And then they say they encrypt it. So it's like a little encrypted link from the key top down into the kernel just before, like the original primal NT function gets it. And in between is gibberish. So if any of these keystroke loggers link into this chain anywhere there, they're going to get gibberish. And I mean, this is how they describe it. And I think, okay, this is gibberish. All the keystroke logger has to do is link in ahead of them at the top end or below them at the bottom end. It's not like they have some privileged position. And maybe the keystroke logger isn't smart enough to do that, or maybe that's just how it operates. So the strongest claim you could possibly make is we saw a keystroke logger once that we could prevent. Okay, maybe 2 or 3 of them. I don't know. But not all of them ever. It'd be like saying, here's the antivirus solution for all the antivirus today and forever. Just install this and you're good to go because we solved that problem. It's like you can't solve the keystroke logger problem. They're claiming to have done so. And then and this is sort of I don't mean to pick on these people. There's a class of these. They all sort of feel the same. It's like, somehow they didn't invoke military grade encryption anywhere in there. They avoided that catchphrase. That's also typically a sign of a problem. But anyway, so Mike, maybe it's good. It just feels like more gunk in my computer, something, one more thing to go wrong, sort of like Power Windows. I don't know. I'm just, grumpy about these things that say, okay, this prevents all of these because nothing can prevent all of anything.
Wow, that's a epigram for the centuries. Maybe put that on your tombstone. Nothing can prevent everything.
All of anything, yeah.
I tried, but nothing can prevent everything. Here's one from Chris in Tokyo, and he's got that question I had about USB Type-C. Steve, with bad USB and the inherently insecure nature of USB looming, what do you think of laptop manufacturers, even Apple, using USB Type-C for power? As far as I know, nothing has been done on the specification side to address security issues. Do you know anything about this? If I were a bad guy, man, I'd be planning where to offer free power to commuters, travelers, and coffee sippers looking to top off their fancy new laptop batteries.
Yeah, and the industry is reacting similarly. Bad USB is still fresh in our mind, and we're now seeing, for example, famously the MacBook that has only a USB connector, which means you'll have to connect to USB in order to get power. And I was looking at at my MagLock, how it's got those 4 little gold dots, and it's like, oh, I miss you because all you could be is DC. Yes, I do, because, you're so innocent. Look, 4 little connectors. Yeah. Instead, you peer into that USB-C, and it looks like an octopus has just taken over. So,
well, the good memory is, the good thing is, as I've been told, the Apple Power Adapter doesn't have any firmware. So you couldn't actually put bad USB on an actual legitimate Apple adapter. The issue is going to...
Yeah, of course. And that's not the attack.
Right.
The attack. The attack is how many times have any of us, as people propose, ever asked to borrow somebody else's power adapter in a pinch?
Yeah.
Or plug into the seat back in the airline.
Right. Well, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Or or there's power outlets all over the place now that are USB, and presumably at some point in the future they'll be USB Type-C, which is why I said somebody needs to make a condom. And as soon as somebody does, let me know, and I'll tell everybody.
Work?
The idea would be it would be a tiny little thing which has a male USB-C on one end and a female on the other, and all it has is the power wires.
Oh, smart!
Going between them.
Oh, that's easy.
Yes, it is. It's trivial. Someone needs to make.
You could make one yourself. You just solder it together. Of course, because if there's no data, if it's just power wires,
then you're back to, look, it's like my MagLock. Yeah. It's my cute little
That's brilliant, Steve. I wonder if somebody's selling that. If not, let's do it.
Yeah, like I said, as soon as everyone knows, make a condom. As soon as someone has, I'll tell everybody.
You should do it. You should call it the Spinrite Power Condom. Seriously. It'd be trivial. You just need a bunch of Type-C connectors, male and female. Yeah, because you have to have an innie as well as an outie. Yeah. And then just wires. It's like, how many power wires are there? There's probably none.
Yeah, we're on question 7. By the time this podcast is done, there will be a project on Kickstarter.
Kickstarter!
And the reason I'm not doing it is because everyone will, and it's really not. I mean, it's worth having one, but it's not worth taking the time to do it. There are lots of other people who can do plastic.
You could have $5 million right now in your pocket.
The USB Type-C power condom. We need a condom.
I think of that. Brilliant. How about this? Look at that. There's already one for USB Type A adapters. It's called Charge Safely. The Sync Stop.
Perfect.
Look at that. Protect your
data. Have Have them do one for the next one.
It's just they call it a USB condom. Oh, man. Yeah, they've got to be doing a Type-C next, of course.
No doubt. No doubt.
A condom that stops Trojans. What an irony, says Wistful in the chat room.
I will mention that with first of all, your new beloved Pixel is also USB Type-C.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. It's got two of them. One on the
So those two.
One on each side, which is kind of cool because you can charge it either way. You can have video out either way.
Oh, that is very
Isn't
nice.
that nice? I wish Apple done that.
I love that that it itself is reversible, and now it's even side-to-side reversible.
Yeah.
So that's double nice. And let's hope that we're not going to run across the FireWire style problem that Thunderbolt also had, where it's a DMA style interface. Presumably, I've not had any chance yet to look at USB. Presumably, they understand that they need to be providing some protection. But again, remember that in the bad USB case, it was the device you were plugging in that was the problem.
Right.
So the idea would be you think you're just getting power, yet you're getting power, and there's also a drive hidden there, which is screwing around with your computer without your knowledge and permission, which is why you need the power condom to say, I want power and nothing else.
Great idea. Hey, let's take a break. We got a couple more questions. Want to get to those in a second, but before we do, our sponsor, GoToAssist, wants to talk to you. In fact, they want to give you a tablet. How about that? GoToAssist, if you're in IT, if you're in support, you know about GoToAssist. It's the #1 solution for remote support worldwide. It has been for 6 years in a row. GoToAssist.com. Trying to talk to employees or customers, and you've done it, and it's the worst thing in the world. You're on the phone. Okay, click the start button. No, the start button, it's on the left. The start button is on the left. Okay. Now, what do you see? Is there a run command? There's no run command. All right. You need to go to the control panel, and you click the start button. It's like, oh, you don't want to do that. Wouldn't you just like to fix it yourself? You wish you could reach out and fix it yourself. You can with GoToAssist. Look, your user needs urgent help. They're thrilled if you say, look, I can fix this. Just accept the request you're getting right now. You have a huge backlog of support requests, not enough staff. You can fix them fast, move on. The cloud-based, easy-to-use solution that's going to make your life easier and make your end users happy. With GoToAssist remote support, you can connect to any computer, any mobile device, screen share with employees or customers so you can diagnose and fix their support problems faster and more effectively. You can use the GoToAssist apps on your smartphone or your tablet to deliver support anytime, anywhere. Plus, with the new See It feature, I love this. This is so cool. People can stream their smartphone's camera to GoToAssist. So you can say, show me, is it the back of the computer? Is it plugged in? Show me the back. Show me the back. You can see whether something's wrong with the hardware. I love that. This is brilliant. I love GoToAssist. Use it with my mom. You can too. And now we got a great, great little premium for you. Sign up today for a 30-day free trial so you know what it's like. GoToAssist.com. No contract, no credit card needed. It's just easy to get started. And as a part of their special March Madness offer, if you buy an annual plan in the U.S. or Canada before the end of the month, before March 31st, 2015, you'll get a free Samsung Galaxy Tab 4. And yes, you can use this to run GoToAssist. It'll be easier for you than ever to provide support on the go and, watch your favorite college hoop action. Get started today. GoToAssist.com and take advantage of that free Samsung Galaxy Tab 4 offer. That is a great deal. GoToAssist.com. Don't you love it? Okay. Is the computer plugged in? I don't know. How do you have an audio port? What would that be? Okay. Take your camera phone. Show me the back of your computer. Okay. Brilliant. All right, Steve, let's see. We got a couple more questions before we wrap this puppy up here. And question number 8 comes to us from John Hugan in Austin, Texas. He's wondering about TPM. We were just talking about TPM in the...
Yep.
I don't know if the original Pixel had a TPM. I bet it didn't. That's awesome.
It's been around for so long.
Yeah, it just adds
It may
cost.
have had it.
But see, that's what you get with it when you spend a little more, like $999. You can get things like a TPM module, which means
you get nice hardware. You can't really do really nice hardware for $200.
No, the screen.
You're going to get some green frog laptop.
Yeah. Steve, I was thinking about your point that having a device that can decrypt what you want decrypted makes a lot of sense and makes a system inherently oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. That having a device that can decrypt what you want decrypted makes the system inherently secure because the key has to be on the system. That's what we were talking about last week. But in that case, why do we trust TPM to provide our security for things like whole disk encryption keys? If we conclude that TPMs aren't secure, are we using them for sheer lack of a better alternative? It stands for the Trusted Program Module. Is that right?
Platform.
That's it.
And so he has, are we using them for sheer lack of a better alternative? Yes.
Oh, really? But it is a secure store itself, right? I mean, you can't, it's hardware.
Yes. Well, yeah, but this was the point that I was making last week, was that in the same way that like a DVD player is hardware, we were able to reverse engineer the keys.
Right.
And there's a fundamental problem when you are relying upon a like a local secret to be kept. The secret is in this thing I'm holding.
You got it. Yeah.
And though all I have to do is pry it out of there. And in fact, prying it out of there is what's often done. The lids are popped on these things.
Wow.
Yes. And now, so I did want to mention, which I didn't before, is that because that's a known problem, things that attempt to protect their physical security are made deliberately vulnerable. For example, I've seen systems where they use a long life battery and then run fine wires through like the air and then pot this thing in black plastic, so that if you're trying to like dissolve the plastic or etch away at it or file it away, you'll break a fine wire and it'll lose power and forget what it knows. I mean, the point is, a lot of effort has gone into the recognition that the physical security of a small piece of electronics has now become crucial. And the key of the Trusted Platform Module is very similar to what Apple has done with the secure, they called Enclave? I can't remember what they called this. The secure element in the iPhone, and that is, it will never export its secret. You can ask it to use its secret in order to prove something or to obtain decryption, but it will never export the secret. So you give it something, it does the work, and then says, here's the result. But you never get the actual work, only the work product. So the answer is yes. TPMs are better than, I mean, as a local repository for secrets, which, they're as safe as we've been able to make them, and the manufacturers of the TPMs make them literally brittle, so that any attempt to tamper with them will fracture them and cause you to lose the secret.
That's interesting. And then you'd know, or if not, you'd at least know, or whatever. So yeah. And I don't know if Google ever said there was a TPM in the original Chromebook Pixel, but Teardown reveals an Infineon chip that is likely to be a TPM module. So I think it is.
It is. TPM's been around so long. Yeah.
It's cheap. And again, for $9.99, you could do anything you want.
Yep.
Bubba Mustafa, who's waiting for DerbyCon 5. I'm not sure what.
I had no idea what that was. I thought maybe you would know what the reference was.
Worried about SSL TLS hijacking proxy. Steve, after listening to the episode about Superfish and understanding that enterprises will proxy the traffic to do deep packet inspection and other security defenses, doesn't that mean the whole SSL TLS model is fundamentally broken? Can't my ISP, Big Brother, Chinese, Wookiees, whatever, pop in on one of the hops and play man in the middle? Does HSTS fix this? Granted, of course, that's only if both sides support it. Can HSTS be proxied as well?
Okay, so I did like the addition of Wookiees as a possible
Never know when
target.
the Wookiees are listening.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so I wanted to sort of just make sure we hadn't sort of gone overboard with Superfish. First of all, HSTS won't fix it because all that does is force you to use encryption. So, that's all it does, force you to use encryption. But if the encryption itself is broken in some way, being forced to use it, well, that doesn't matter because the encryption itself is broken. For any of this to work, your browser must trust that man in the middle. Your browser must trust that proxy. That's done in the case of Superfish because Superfish has installed itself in your computer and given it a certificate that has given your browser, remember that 400 some certificate authorities. Well, now there's 401, and no longer is the Hong Kong post office #1 on our suspect list. Now Superfish is in there also. So the point is, an ISP cannot break SSL and TLS, nor can Big Brother, technically, except I'm sure that the NSA can mint any certificate they want to like on a whim. There has to be that they control a certificate authority, among all those that the browser trusts. It has to be, but not an ISP. An ISP would have to require that you load a certificate in your browser in order for your browser to trust them. And I have mentioned that it's a bit of a chill that ISPs might in some horrible future become ballsy enough to say, oh yeah, sign up for us and here's how you install our certificate in your browser so that we're able to protect your security. So if that day comes, that's going to be a dark one. The idea that people might not have a choice but to install an ISP's certificate, because what that would mean is the ISP is doing a man in the middle, maybe in order to do the kind of caching which SSL TLS prevents in order to lower their bandwidth. But I sure hope we never see that day. But anyway, for what it's worth, it's not easy to do this. You need to get the browser to trust the proxy, and that requires adding a certificate that the proxy provides.
Finally, number 10, Alan Figgins in Auckland, New Zealand, had a question about target-style security breaches and Squirrel. Steve, I've been a listener since the day you netcast episode 1 of Security Now, a grateful user of Shields Up since the 90s, and owner of Spinrite license since the early noughties. So a huge thank you. In episode 493, there was a question regarding Squirrel, and in particular, whether there might be a potential security issue if, Target, to continue using them as an example, is compromised, and their Squirrel database would be exfiltrated. Your response to that query was it wouldn't really matter too much since the bad guys would only have gotten a list of users' public keys, and there's no particular value to those or in those to any other person or website. I agree with that statement, but I'm wondering if there might be another security issue whereby a bad guy gets into Target's Squirrel database, and rather than exfiltrating it, they replace a user's public key to be the matching half of a public-private key pair that the bad guy, have generated. Now, the bad guy can log into Twitter's website using Squirrel, sign the knots with a private key that they have, which now matches the public key held by Target, giving them access to the user's account. Is that correct? Or have I misunderstood how Squirrel works?
Alan, you understand it perfectly well. And yes, if somebody were able to alter a database of accounts, then there is no way to prevent that. And you could argue that there's theoretically no way to prevent that. That is, any authentication system would fail that level of breach. And in fact, if bad guys get in, it's not really even clear to me like that's what they would do. It's like if they have that level of control to alter the account database of some target, like Target, then they've got free run of the place. So you're absolutely right. Squirrel won't protect, nor that would be like changing someone's password to something else. So now the bad guys can log in as them with a password that they have changed. Or, I mean, like any authentication system, if you change what it is that the destination service has that identifies a person as some other person, then it's going to identify the new people.
Doesn't matter if it's a password or a squirrel. It's
doesn't matter if it's anything. I mean, nothing even theoretically
right.
can breach that. So, there was another. This is sort of along the lines of let's explore this all the way. I mean, I'm glad to explore it all the way. We have explored that. And it's like, yeah, I mean, nothing can withstand that sort of attack. So, it's not. There's nothing I can do. There's. I mean, there's absolutely nothing. So I don't consider that a problem. It just, or even a characteristic of, I mean, it's sort of like the nature of authentication is something's identifying the account holder, and if you change that, then they're going to be identified as somebody else.
Yeah. Steve, we've done it again. 10 questions.
Yes, and episode 499 is behind us. Here comes 500 next week.
You know what that means? Next week, we're going to do something. I should get you a cake.
I don't eat cake.
Set up fireworks. I'll get you a meat cake. It'll be all protein.
Give me a carrot.
Carrot. Right. You're easy. 500 episodes. Isn't that great? Well,
yeah, I love it.
500 great episodes, I might add.
I'll have something to say next week.
I'm glad you're feeling better. I am so
happy. We're going to do for 500.
Okay, good. Kind of a special little thing.
I have some feelings.
I'll eat cake, you watch.
Perfect. Just don't choke it. Just don't spit it out when you hear what I have to say.
Uh-oh. It's not going to be your last episode, is it?
No, get some Kleenex.
Oh no.
No. It's not bad.
Okay.
That's just how good this is.
I'm glad you're feeling well. And feeling
Me
better.
too.
Yeah. We do this show, and I guess you don't want to miss the next one. We do this show every Tuesday. Now, it's been a little confusion because people say, did you start early? Well, the problem is we start daylight savings time early, saving time.
We strange people in California.
Yeah, well, the U.S., we started...
Oh, wait, our daylight savings time changes at a different time than other people's daylight saving? Oh, my
So they haven't gone to summertime yet in Europe. So we moved the podcast without telling them, kind of. We are still at the same time as far as we're concerned, which is 1 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. That's, of course, 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. But it is a different time. Actually, it's now 1:30, isn't it? 1:30 and 4:30 Daylight Time in the U.S.
Right.
But it's a different time UTC because UTC does not change. If only we were UTC, it does not change. And you need to calculate the offset from UTC to your local time, and then this will all make sense. So just so you understand, we are at 2030 UTC. So you have to figure out your own offset from now on until we move. That's the problem. We moved on you. And that's just blame Ben Franklin. We don't need it anymore, but we got it.
It's annoying.
It's annoying. It doesn't save energy. Yeah. People die as a result of it.
4 heart attacks.
I almost had a heart attack. And I know I had crappy sleep. I think you got sick because it just changes your circadian rhythms for no reason. It doesn't save energy. The farmers don't like it. That's a canard. There's no value to it whatsoever. The reason it doesn't save energy is it's a push. We use more air conditioning and less fuel oil or vice versa. So it's a push. So there's really no value to it. And I do predict that sometime in our lifetime, this time change will end. I don't know.
We're pretty old.
Well, that's how optimistic I am.
Okay.
I'm just an optimist, Steve. As Alex Lindsay says, I just want the sun overhead at noon. I don't care about anything else.
How about sometime during this podcast?
That'd be good.
Daylight savings time will change.
That'd be good.
That'd be good.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. Always a pleasure. You'll find 16 kilobit versions of this show notes, transcriptions, everything you need at Steve's site, grc.com. You'll also find Spinrite there, the world's best hard drive maintenance and recovery utility, and lots of freebies and everything you need to know about Squirrel so you can implement it on your website. If you can't watch live and you want video, we have that too. We do audio, high-quality audio and video at our site, twit.tv/SN. It is also available wherever podcasts are aggregated, including iTunes. You can get the Twit apps on almost any platform and watch that way as well, thanks to our third-party developers for those. But whatever way, you don't want to miss an episode. And if you're going to miss an episode, you definitely don't want to miss next week's episode 500 of Security Now.
Ooh, boy.
And one last week to vote in the Podcast Awards. Make sure you vote for Steve. PodcastAwards.com. Vote early, vote often and often and often. Vote all the time. You don't vote for any other show. Don't dilute your vote. Vote for Steve.
There is no other show.
There is no other show. There's one show.
Even the people competing with us in that section have voted for us.
There's no reason you shouldn't win this every year, but I guess we have to go through the motions. So please,
I just
vote.
decided that this one I want. Then I'll be quiet from now on.
Well, that's kind of how I feel. It's like, well, I could have it every year because we have such a devoted audience and they're very active and they participate and they're big.
It's a great audience.
There's 70,000 people listening to this show. If each and every one of you voted every week,
yeah, we'd break their web server.
It'd be like, okay, well, let's see who. Are you in the technology or are you what category?
Technology.
Let's see who won technology. Let's see. Oh, here's a podcast with 300,000 votes. What's the next biggest one? Oh, I guess he won. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, my friend. See you next week.
See you next week for episode 500 of Security Now.
Security Now.